Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hypothetically Speaking, the show where we talk about anything unexplained, unsolved, and unnatural. This is the second recording for YouTube we've done. I'm Gabrielle Chance.
I'm Morgan Roberts.
And I'm Allison Horkey.
And once again, Allison is going to be leading us in a conversation, partially inspired by our love of brackish water and our concern for the fish that dwell there.
Yes, so today we will be talking about creatures of the deep that I would believe probably find their way to brackish waters occasionally. I will say that knowing, where these are said to dwell does not make me feel any safer about being in brackish waters because, I don't know, brackish waters are scary.
It's concerning. There's alligators.
Alligators? Bull sharks are terrifying. And bull sharks, I mean, they haunt brackish waters, but they also move upriver quite a ways, so.
Yeah, they're spooky.
More than one would like, for sure.
Yes.
I just recently, literally this morning, heard about there was a lake in the 80s that they were doing a mining project in the salt near it. It was by the Gulf of Mexico. And then they were also digging into it for oil. And so it created a giant whirlpool that sucked a bunch of stuff in because all the water was going into the salt mine.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being a freshwater lake, now it's a brackish lake.
Unfortunate that would happen too because fresh water is important. It's okay. But anyways, our first friend of the deep, we'll say, is the mythic Kraken. So the Kraken is actually Kraken-like creatures are found in folklore and mythos all over the world, which is always super interesting because when there's something that just shows up across cultures over and over again, you have to wonder why is it, right? One-time sightings, that's one thing. There could be a lot of explanations, but when it's all over the world and there's stories about it that kind of span time and distance, it becomes super interesting, I think. But the Kraken is specifically coming out of Scandinavian folklore, and is said to kind of dwell near up by Norway and the Baltic Sea and that sort of thing. And that is stories I think of the Kraken date back to the 1100s, so very kind of ancient old accounts of that. And of course right, that's what we have in recorded history basically, but these stories they date back even further, I'm sure. But there's some other kind of monsters of the same name are the coming out of Greek lore is a lot of times it's the Scylla that's
from Odysseus.
Yes.
Big tentacle whirlpool thing. Ooh.
Yep. And then another is the Lusca from the kind of coming out of the Caribbean, specifically in an island in the Bahamas. And then in Japan, a myth about the Akorokami is another myth that kind of follows the same pattern. And then in New Zealand, the Taweke Mutugangi is another one. And I apologize to anybody who knows how to pronounce those correctly because
Couldn't be us.
Could not be us.
Try our best here.
Yes,
Yeah.
typically the Kraken is thought of as like a giant squid or octopus-like creature with these big tentacles, big enough to like crack down ships larger than a ship, with tentacles that are like the size of a mast, of a ship's mast. So like just able to completely wreck ships. Other kind of similar myths from around the world have very similar descriptions. So like the Scylla is a supernatural female creature in Greek mythology with like 12 feet and 6 heads on long snaky necks, and each of them have like shark-like teeth, and then this part does differ a little bit, but then the loins were like girdled by heads of baying dogs.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
But
I think it's weird.
there's some things that are similar about this.
The Odyssey is a weird story.
Lots of
Yeah.
Greek myths are mixes of such interesting animals.
Bards would still give it a go.
Bards would do that.
Bards make do.
Oh, yikes. I'm so sorry, listeners.
But I think it's the like long snaky necks that are considered to be similar to like Kraken mythology.
Because wasn't it? It was in the when they were in the narrow cliff side is when they ran into
Yes,
that,
and
right?
then there's so
And the whirlpool was separate. I was thinking of the other weird.
the other
sea
weird
monster.
creature that's down there,
Yep.
which is like, oh, if you're not in danger of one, you're in danger of the other.
Right,
kind
because
of
they had
thing.
to like go through that little narrow passage and pass it, and it was bad.
Yeah.
I think the whirlpool one is the one they put in Percy Jackson.
I think you're right.
That
Yeah.
Ares' daughter's warship ends up
Mhm.
in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think. Yeah. You. That seems like it'd be a little easier to translate.
That's fair.
There is I think a jellyfish or some sort of polyp or something that is named after the Kraken-y one though. It has all these little, like tennis ball-y appendages.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of fun.
I think I might have it in my notes. The other monster that tends to be near the other one that tends to be by Scylla is I don't remember exactly because they have two different. There's like two different monsters, but they tend to work together.
Yeah.
It's not the Hydra.
No,
it's
the Hydra's
Hydras are kind of fun though.
Hydra's
Oh.
are fun.
Charbidus?
Yeah.
Charbidus?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah, that's the other one that's like, and I think, well, it's interesting too because Krakens do typically have an accompanying whirlpool so that if the Kraken itself doesn't get you as it's descending, the whirlpool forms and that will get the sailors. So
I can see where the whirlpool too kind of provides an option to sort of drive them towards the Kraken. So if they descend, create a whirlpool, and then move over, then the ship has to pass over where the Kraken would be,
yeah,
rather than giving them more space to kind of go elsewhere.
They are.
it's like setting up a trap.
Yeah. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
So yes, that's the Scylla, and then Lusca from the Caribbean islands. Specifically, it's thought to inhabit blue holes near Andros, and blue holes are like these openings to like very deep caves that actually go into the island, and like the caves are like filled with city water, and then they can even open up in the island in some cases. And the Lusca it's either described as like a giant octopus, a giant cuttlefish, or a like half shark, half octopus creature. this creature is said to grow to 23 meters long, which ends up being about 75 feet. So it's just like a shark with tentacles, which is so much scarier than a regular shark, I think.
Definitely. Giving reach to a shark makes the shark so much worse.
It's like if you add like opposable thumbs to a creature, it instantly becomes more scary. Tentacles have the same effect.
Yes. Raccoons.
I love them, but they are a little freaky.
Nature's legal criminals.
I think raccoons would betray you.
Oh, 100%.
But the videos
But I
of them
do love
running
that.
while
There's-
holding stuff in their front hands, so they have to like move side to side, is hilarious.
They do waddle really bad, and it's so... I love them.
Yeah, my friend and I were having a walk late at night, and we were like, is that a cat? No, it was a raccoon, and then it disappeared into the sewers.
I saw a possum outside my building the other night. It was hanging out. It was pretty fun.
I do like the possums, too.
Possums are good.
Possums, stray cats, raccoons.
Street cat.
Support your local street cats.
Just support them, please.
Skunks are included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Notably, if you get sprayed by a skunk, take a bath in tomato juice. Don't go to public locations and make other people smell you like my uncle did.
Oh god. Yeah.
Would not recommend.
No. The closest I've ever come to a skunk was my dog being sprayed, and there's a picture of her looking like an absolute menace, being like, I did nothing wrong, wet with the skunk juice. We had to bathe her so much.
Yeah.
I've only run into them in, like, roadkill incidents, so it's like, it's bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as, like, smell-wise.
Direct spray.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Back on topic.
back to Kraken-like creatures. The Japanese Akorakami.
You want to look at it? I was a weeb. I know some. I know some syllables and sounds.
Not surprising.
That's mean. Akorakamu or Akorakami. I would say one of those
Something
two.
like that. Okay. Well, if you are interested in looking it up and maybe finding a way to pronounce it, the spelling is Akkorokami. Or if you know Japanese, you probably can say it. So good for you. Better off than we are. So I think this legend is actually really interesting because it like originates as a gigantic spider first, and then which lived in a mountain in the mountains, and then it descended upon this like little town and caused havoc. And so, fearing for their lives, the villagers prayed to the gods to save them. And the god that answered them pulled the spider into the sea, like into the bay, and turned it into a giant octopus, who then took over the bay as its god, and since then has been known by the villagers as Akorakami.
That sounds a lot like a story that the Greek would have.
Yeah.
So much.
Yep. Yeah, the gigantic spider part is... There's other stories about them in Greek mythology. I think that's kind of one of the things I like so much about myths is that they do sort of mirror each other throughout different cultures. And it's just a fun reminder of like, humans are so cute and special, and they're just so, they just all do like the same little things.
Yeah.
It's endearing.
Yeah. And then in New Zealand, which is kind of a myth from the Maori peoples, is the Te Weke Mutarangi, which is a monstrous octopus which there were like actually a few different locations that the myth could be set in, but it like destroyed these like certain river mouths and created like the kind of snaking, like, do you know how like rivers and in estuaries it like breaks off kind of, and so it, like the tentacles created that. But those are just kind of a few of the different myths around the world. So kind of with that is there's like a few potentially modern explanations, a few different actual creatures that have been believed to maybe be these. One of them, as we sort of started talking about, is like just the giant octopus. And right now the giant octopus is kind of from Southern California to Alaska and west to the Aleutian Islands and to Japan. And giant octopuses they can grow up to like 16 feet.
Yeah, they're like, truly, I think we like to sort of sea monsters. Like, the sea is the scariest thing ever.
So scary.
Sailors were absolutely correct in calling those things monsters.
Mm-hmm.
We know they exist, and they're scary, and they're real. They fight whales.
And that's the other thing, is that like this is like modern day giant octopus that like exist over by like Washington State. Like these places can be found still, and that's like, well, what about when we don't have the same type of like human interaction with their environment of like mass industrialized fishing, and like, I mean, there's a lot of like drilling and stuff. Like, what about when they didn't have their habitat interrupted, basically?
Yeah. What about the creatures that probably used to exist that maybe don't anymore, or even the things that are out there? We know less about our ocean than we know about space, pretty much. Like, we have explored so little of our ocean, partially because it's impractical and we can't like breathe down there, and making machinery to go that deep and withstand the pressure and all of that is really complicated, as we are all now well aware. But yeah, there's so many horrifying things down there in the dark that we know nothing about, I am sure.
Yeah. I also think that giant octopuses are really, well, octopuses in general are really interesting to me because they are like so incredibly intelligent creatures, but they have such short lifespans. And so it's like, for like most creatures on this planet, it's like, oh, the longer the lifespan, typically it's thought of that they're more the more intelligence. And octopus are like totally backwards from this, because their lifespan is only like 3 to 5 years. And some octopuses are like 2 years at the most.
Yeah.
So
there's I remember if it was like the UK at large or if it was just Great Britain, but there was a debate being had of if it's humane to keep like octopi and other like cephalopods, I think mostly octopi though, in zoos because of their level of intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being a problem because, I mean, they do try to escape too.
Oh, they
like,
do.
They can like break aquarium glass.
They can get through a whole like I'd say like a $50 size hole. I don't know that exactly for a fact, but I know I've heard something of the sort about them.
Blue ring octopus are so scary. Like, they're pretty, they have really pretty patterns, and they're not necessarily aggressive. Like, they don't go out of their way to hurt you.
Yeah.
But they will kill you within a few minutes if you get exposed to their toxin. And it's hard because, like, the little baby ones, when they're small, are such a pretty shade of blue, and they're so cute.
That people are like,
people
really
touch
dumb
them.
humans are like, look at the cute little sea animal. No.
It's not as bad as that guy who picked up the stonefish.
Yeah.
But
that was
it's pretty bad. Please
Yeah.
do not touch any aquatic creature that isn't in a supervised touch pool
Yes.
for the animal's safety and your own.
I think it's worth to note, like, you know, those colorful small things are alive for a reason, and you should be wondering why.
You should be wondering.
Colors are usually a strong indicator. Not so good for you.
Yep.
Unless it's birds.
And then they're just trying to find a girlfriend.
Just
And then you should be especially aware of them because it is the bird's fault.
they're trying to look good. Oh, it is the bird's fault. Yeah, you should be aware
It's
because
always the birds. They
the
did
birds have done everything.
Mhm.
Everything we've ever spoken about, they have had a hand in.
The government made them so pretty so that we want to look at them and be around them so they can spy better, obviously.
That makes sense. Moving on. Anyway, back to some other kind of modern day explanations is the giant squid, which is also fun.
Yeah.
The giant squid reaches about 39 to 43 feet long, which is huge. But I will say, it's worth it to remember that when they're like measuring squids, there's like the mantle, which is like the head part, and then there's the tentacles, or like the arms, I guess. And then there's the two very long tentacles. And so they are measuring the very long tentacles to the end of the mantle.
Yep.
That being said, 43 feet.
That is so much.
In comparison to school bus, for our Americans.
Americans we use everything but the metric system is a measurement.
I love the like sinkhole that is 3 washing machines across.
It's such weird things too. I think that's where that child in the video where someone asks him how much he weighs and he goes, about 50 squirrels gets it from.
How do you know that?
You're like, you're the height of like 2 1/3 owls or something.
My
like
mom
that.
was very offended when I told her how many owls high she was, and she thought I was really setting the bar pretty low and was calling her much shorter than she actually was. And I was like, I'm talking about like a standard large owl, not like the little baby ones
Yeah.
that you see in like holes or something
Yeah,
where they're
not
kind of
burrowing
small.
owls.
Like those are different, but like full owls are much larger than you think
Yeah.
they are.
Is that like horned owls? Those are
Yeah,
that's
horned
one of the biggest
owls.
species, right?
I think great horned owls are the biggest.
Yeah.
That or
Because there's
maybe
like snow. I think snow owls are small.
snow owls are smaller. I think banded and barn owls are pretty big, but I'm pretty sure
I think-
at the very
I
least
think barn
big.
owls are smaller than great horned
Lancaster
owls for sure.
fish owls are what come up when you just search what the largest owl is, according to BBC Wildlife magazine. Apparently, they can weigh 3.5 kilograms, and their wingspan is 200 centimeters.
Big.
That is a very
That's a
big
lot.
wingspan.
Yes, so back to squids. They're really long.
So much squid.
Yes. But giant squids, it should be worth noting, those are the ones that like leave scars from their suckers on sperm whales down in the ocean, right? Because sperm whales, they hunt giant squid. And so they're like built, at least in part, to like protect themselves
they
from
have-
being eaten.
I read a book about this with my children at the first, when I was student teaching last year. On their suckers, they have like teeth, basically.
That's ucky. I don't like that.
So that's how they leave scars.
Yep.
Partially is because they have like, essentially along with the sucker, like hooks.
I dislike pretty much everything about that.
They're scary. Also, another thing that's kind of scary about them is that they're everywhere. They live all over the world. They live in the northern hemisphere, and they live in the southern hemisphere, and they live in the west, and they live in the east. And you can't escape them if you're on a coast. They're around.
Do they inhabit the brackish, or do they stick to
I think-
more salinated water?
I actually think the brackish is probably a little bit too. They are, like, tend to be deeper. So I
Yeah.
think brackish water is probably safe, but honestly wouldn't even put it past them.
Yeah, I imagine because they're usually pretty deep sea. They surface, but they're not that often.
They don't like to hang out up there.
Yeah, but there's other squid species that do come up sometimes, and they're also dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, giant squids are like huge, and they just don't tend to like interact with humans generally.
Unlike the whales.
I think the more we talk about this, the more I'm thinking that people that are afraid of sharks are afraid of the wrong thing.
I do too. You're less likely to get shark attack than like something else that was like more common. It's very low likelihood that you're going to.
Definitely are more likely to be harmed by a cow or a deer than you are by a shark.
Especially here.
Yeah, we're a little landlocked for that.
To be concerned.
I mean, honestly, I can't remember the exact number for shark attacks, but if I remember correctly, it is very low.
Mm-hmm. In the single digits every year at most.
And I know a lot of people have heard this stat now, but about 13 people a year die as a result of vending machine incidences. So, like, human error is more worrisome for you than sharks.
Squids, though.
You should be scared of the biting tentacles.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I do think, like, mostly they'll do that. Like, giant squids don't hunt humans.
It's protective.
Yeah. Even most cases with sharks, I think it's like a mistaken identity. Like, they think that a human looks like a prey. Like, maybe they look too seal-like.
They're flailing a bit too much or something.
Yeah, or like if they might like look kind of fish-like or something. So,
yes. Or they feel a bit threatened. Oh,
those are
we have
hooks.
been shown an image of their tentacle hooks.
That's
don't recommend, to be honest.
That's very scary. Also, if the giant squid wasn't big enough, there is also the colossal squid.
Oh, this is a colossal squid also, just for reference.
So the colossal squid is like so much. Their mantle is like much larger than a giant squid, so they end up weighing more, but they end up being a little bit shorter. So colossal squids, on the other hand, are only 30 to 33 feet long, and these are big sizes anyways for the species, but can weigh over 1,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So,
that's like at least 5 Paxtons.
That's so many Paxtons.
Many Paxtons, indeed. On the other hand, though, colossal squids do tend to be limited to the southern hemisphere, so they do hang out kind of in cooler waters from like Antarctica up to like New Zealand, Australia. So I don't know. Add it to the list of things Australia needs to be weary of.
They just got the short end. Well, honestly, they have more weird, like, scary things typically, but they don't have them in their backyards like we do. Also, I should clarify, the Paxton comment was about stacking Paxtons in terms of length and not as a...
I presume.
I know, just to clear the air there.
Yeah, no. For anyone unaware, my boyfriend is very, very tall, and his name is Paxton. So one of our favorite units of measurement is how many Paxtons tall something is.
Or
it gives us a bit more scale, personally.
D&D characters, like, they're Paxton height.
I do have a D&D character that is Paxton height.
Yeah. I have one that is taller than Paxton.
For
wow.
listeners at home, it's somewhere around 6'5", 6'6", in that range.
Unless Braden's saying it and then he gets taller every time his height is mentioned, and it's like he's like 8'2" or whatever. Shoot, I did have a thread here with something with squids. Now I can't. Or Australia. They have all the like scary things that we hear about, like the octopi, and they are warmer water. They tend to get some more interesting.
Lots of interesting creatures.
And they have a lot of coral and things like that, so they get some more interesting kind of
reef.
Yeah,
there's
ring kind of thing.
There's like more of a reason to go out into the ocean.
Yeah.
That we don't really have with like the Great Barrier Reef and stuff like that. The thing is that they generally have like all their stuff is contained to like the outback or a surrounding area, because like drop bears don't actually exist. It's the birds, no. But we just have them in our backyards. Like we're the ones with the bears in our yards and the lions on our streets, and we're like, those people with their.
When I was in high school, I was stalked by a mountain lion while going night hiking with my friend, and that was terrifying. Yeah. Truly terrifying.
Not fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think I talked about this on here once. Like, in elementary school, there was a mountain lion sighted within, like, a block of where I had kindergarten. So there was a day that they were like, before you go out for recess, if you see the mountain lions, this is how you respond. You make yourself big, and you make loud noises, and you'll scare them off. All right, have fun at recess. So
I would hope they'd make, like, a teacher perimeter, like,
so,
the edge of the playground.
I mean, there was... And, like, yes, there was technically a fence around the playground. That is not going to stop a mountain lion.
No.
That is in no way tall enough. It was not an extensive enough fence. But
if the mountain lion is hungry, it will get over the fence. It's a cat still.
And you even see how Floridians respond to alligators and crocodiles and cottonmouths and, like, really scary snakes, water moccasins. And they're casually like, And we in the United States are like, Australia.
It's weird. Truly, I don't know, there was just a video of the kangaroo trying to drown the dog.
So kangaroos are also emus.
Ostriches are more evil than emus.
Yeah, that's fair.
But emus are still fairly evil. The Australians also, I wouldn't even say lost a war. They, like, barely even put up a war against they wasted a lot of resources, but it was in no way
helpful for anyone.
It was a kind of a lost cause.
Like, you're shooting machine guns into a field of birds and you're like, they're impenetrable. No, you're just not hitting them.
They just, like, didn't even notice.
Well, I think they were like aiming for the heads, but since they have long, skinny heads, they missed all of it.
It makes me think of, like, when you're trying to play badminton, because the handle's so long. If you've most recently played tennis, sometimes when you swing, you just miss because there's so much space between, like, the actual racket and how long the handle is. And they were just struggling.
They were having a hard time.
But anyways, yes, so, like, colossal squids are, I think, another contender for not so much the sea monsters found, like Kraken-like creatures found, right? Like, the Scylla is going to be, like, in the Mediterranean, so it's not going to be that, but it probably, like, a giant squid, I think, if anything. And then for Japan, they called it a giant octopus anyway, so I would probably just go with that, because the giant octopus does get over there, and giant octopus, I think, they also don't, like, necessarily, like, they don't really attack humans, but I don't know, I think they're smart enough to if they want to.
If they felt threatened.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of just animal life in general that's not going to go out of its way to hunt or harm or attack humans. We're not really their natural prey. We're not their general food. But also humans have a tendency to poke around and mess with things in a way that can make an animal feel threatened enough that it needs to protect itself or its young or something of that variety.
A lot of cephalopods have camouflage as their first means of defense, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're not going to be coming out like swinging. But if you provoke something enough to scare it, and you're not listening to like it trying to hide from you and it like spraying ink or whatever else it's doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of your fault that you get got.
Yeah.
They just want to be left alone. That's all.
They really do. I mean, I would probably, if I was on the end of like somebody's hook or something, I would definitely be fighting as much as I could, and I would try to harm that person.
Someone drop an anchor right next to me, I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah, naturally speaking. So, under my like modern explanations category, I also have question mark, because honestly, the sea is a mysterious place, and although these are like 3 contenders for monsters, I could totally see there being something that we don't quite know about. Yeah. And that being, or like we were saying, like something that's not in existence today. But you really never know with the ocean.
It's a different sort of place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the other, I don't know if we have time to move on to the sea serpent because we only have 10 minutes.
It's up to you.
I'm kind of okay keeping it here.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
It's true.
Closing remarks on the Kraken.
The ocean is scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always find it like truly, I think when we talk about the sea, it's like these are monstrous animals.
Yes.
Just because of the environment they live in necessitates such.
Mm-hmm.
But like we hear a lot about things that are also monstrous from like that we just know of. If we were today or in the past however many years still running into megafauna or animals the size of dinosaurs, we'd be calling those monsters too. That's where we got the name from. So like in a way I don't know, in a lot of like stuff it seems very like irrational to be like, oh, these sea monsters, when there were so many reasons to be afraid at sea, and there still are.
Yeah.
So I still believe, if not in a mythical kraken, there's something on the ocean because we don't know even half of what's out there.
Yeah. I'd assume that beast of that level exists in the water and wouldn't be able to just avoid the few rudimentary things we've sent to explore very much of the ocean, I think is a wild misconception, especially with how dark and how minimal the perception of a lot of the items we send down to the bottom of the ocean to investigate are. Staying out of that direct lens of where that light is, which would be very visible and apparent from a long ways away at the bottom of the ocean, I feel like wouldn't be all that difficult.
Yeah, well, I think that the ocean is incredibly mysterious, right? I also think that a lot of these myths come from the ocean being so, like, as dangerous as it is, and, like, right, like, parts of these creatures, like the giant squid, washed ashore. And again, like, this is how big they get now. Like, current day, they can get to this size. What about when their habitat wasn't as interrupted by humans? You know, like, we've had such an incredible effect on the ocean and on the ocean's ecosystem, but it
could have been the same animals, direct ancestors that were just at a way different scale even.
Yeah, that could have gotten to that size. And I mean, the ocean is so deep. these true giants can grow there and get to this size now. I don't know. Really, something like a kraken, could it cause like huge whirlpools? Maybe not. But what if there's a whirlpool anyways and you saw like a tentacle not that long ago? Like,
You'd make some assumptions.
I'd put some. I'd start fearing some tentacles.
I'd start throwing the bananas overboard.
Generally, I fear tentacles anyways.
Generally, yes. They are a scary, scary appendage.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Appendage is a general thing is kind of a concerning word usually.
Yeah.
Tails and tentacles and all sorts of weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing about these creatures is they're so vastly different from the types of creatures that humans would have always interacted with, right? Like octopus are so weird.
Yeah.
They're
Like,
so interesting.
They swim strange compared to other like animals, cephalopods in general, right? Like they swim a lot differently. They have like weird biology that we just like is so unfamiliar to us. So like, of course these creatures are going to be like at a heightened risk of being like scary to our human brains. That being said, I think, you know, a lot of these creatures they're not like real threats to humans. I mean, we're not going down there, so generally. So, but I also think it's like definitely they are sort of, I think something that's so fascinating to me about them is that they're the last sorts of creatures of the deep that are kind of shrouded in mystery, and like we still don't know a lot about them or kind of their mating patterns and stuff like that. And in some ways that's almost like should be protected in a way.
Yeah.
It's like keeping these things a mystery to us.
That's fair.
But it's definitely terrifying, and still stay out of brackish waters.
Still, you don't want to run into most of the things that live there.
Yeah. There's minimal reason to be in brackish water, really.
Mm-hmm. Also, there's a ton of birds by brackish water, just saying.
Just saying. Keep
All
an eye
around.
out.
Not worth it.
Mm-mm.
Not worth it. Inspired by your deep dive into river monsters.
Maybe a little.
This has been our probably first of a couple sea-themed episodes. And what a great creature to talk about right before Halloween.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody dress up like a kraken. Actually, never mind. Don't. I regret that instantly.
But I would recommend that someone dresses up as a cryptozoologist.
Oh yes, dress up as
Yes.
a cryptozoologist.
Someone who studies cryptids in their many forms.
Mm-hmm.
Couple's costume. Mothman and a cryptozoologist.
I do love that, actually.
It'd be good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think those are our thoughts on the Kraken. If it is simply a force of nature that we know, or one that is still mysterious to us. This has been us on Hypothetically Speaking on YouTube tonight. This should be up on time, hopefully. We shall see. But until next time, stay out of brackish water, don't own an axe, and the birds did it.